this lesson, we're going to cover two key tools that can help you move your existing design assets into Framer: our Figma plugin and our browser extension. Whether you're grabbing pieces of a live site or entire sections from Figma, these tools make it easy to take the hard work you've already put in and quickly move it on over to Framer. Let's take a look at how each of these tools works. Let's start with how the Figma plugin works. Here, I've got Framer open and I've also got Figma open. So to prevent any confusion, when I switch over to Figma, I have changed my desktop wallpaper slightly to be purple. So it's a little easier to tell Figma apart from Framer as I'm swiping back and forth. But here I am in Figma, and the first thing we want to do is get the plugin installed, so to speak. So I'm going to head down to the little toolbar and click on the Actions icon. You can also press Command-K on a Mac or Control-K on a PC at any time to bring this menu up. And I'm going to go to the Plugins and Widgets tab. And here, I'm just going to search for Framer. And the first thing that should come up is Figma to HTML with Framer. That's our plugin. This menu that appears gives us a brief description and the option to run the plugin or save the plugin. I'm going to save the plugin so that it's handy for us to get back to later on, because this isn't going to be a one-shot deal. We're going to go back and run the plugin each time we want to bring something over from Figma to Framer. So I'm going to click Save, and now at any time on the All tab, I'm going to find Figma to HTML with Framer here. And essentially all we need to do now is run the plugin, but while we have layers selected that we'd like to bring over to Framer. So essentially, instead of hitting copy to copy layers from Figma, we're going to instead select them and run the plugin. The plugin replaces the copy or Command-C or Control-C function that you would normally do to copy things from point A to point B. So like I said, we got to get something selected first. So I'm going to start small. It's always helpful to start kind of bite-sized because not everything comes over 100% perfectly. There are some discrepancies in terms of what's supported by Figma versus what is supported by Framer in terms of the overall feature set, style properties, components, etc. So good to start small. I'm going to grab the navbar. And if we look at the layer list, the hierarchy here is really simple. We have the desktop, which represents this whole sort of breakpoint, the page, the viewport. I've already got that going on over in Framer, so I don't need to bring that over. I've already got my main parent frame. It already has a white background, so I don't need to bring that over. I'm going to start with its immediate child layers. So starting with the navbar. With this selected, like I said, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to run the Figma to HTML with Framer plugin, and that effectively copies my selection to the clipboard. So now that I've copied the navbar, I can head over here to Framer and I can just hit paste. We don't have to run a plugin or anything like that. I'm just going to press Command-V on my Mac for paste, and it has now imported those layers. In fact, the auto layout properties from Figma came with it. So I've got a semi-responsive navbar here right out of the gate. Easy as that. And if we look over on the properties panel, the width is automatically set to 100% because the width was set to fill over in Figma. So that came over. That's really handy. But one thing that I do want to do before I add more stuff is I want to take my entire desktop breakpoint and I want to add a layout to it for a couple of reasons. One, I want each section to automatically flow from top to bottom. So starting with adding a layout, I've established a stack. So now that this is a stack, theoretically, each section that I paste in is going to flow from top to bottom because it is a vertical stack and it's set to distribute from the start, which is the top of a vertical stack. The other thing I want to do is change the height from 1080, which is eventually going to be too small, to fit content. So now that I have it set to fit content, it's kind of clamped down vertically to that navbar. But when I paste in the next section, it will expand to make room. So let's do exactly that. I'm going to head back over to Figma. I'm going to grab this main section here that's got quite a bit of stuff going on. I've got a few text layers that are wrapped in a frame. I've got an image, and I've got a little stack of features that are comprised of several text boxes with icons, etc. So pretty typical, but a pretty complex set of layout elements that I have selected here by selecting this whole parent frame. So now it's time to run the plugin again. And a handy little shortcut to run the previous plugin again is Option Command P if you're on a Mac, and that should be Alt Control P if you're on a PC. So by hitting that shortcut, I have run the plugin again. You could always manually go back down here and click on the plugin to run it again, but that shortcut is probably something that you're going to hit over and over and over again. So worthwhile to commit that to memory. So now that I've copied these layers to the clipboard, I'm going to head back over to Framer. And here, all I'm going to do is hit paste. But before I hit paste, I want to make sure I'm pasting into the correct frame. So right now I have the desktop breakpoint selected. That's good. That's what I want, because I want to paste this into the desktop breakpoint. I don't want to paste this into the navbar and make it a child of the navbar. So desktop breakpoint selected, all good here. Command V to paste. And there we have it. Here is our section. It came right over. Since we have our desktop breakpoint set to fit the height, it automatically got taller, so everything fits. Everything fits really nicely. If we look over on the properties panel though, we can see that this section is set to a fixed width. We don't want that, so I am going to change that from fixed to fill so that that always fills the width as the browser gets bigger and smaller. But to make this properly responsive, we might have quite a bit of work to do. Let's actually preview, see what we're up against by going into the preview window and making this a little more narrow. You can see here that not everything is responding. We have a little bit of that auto layout going on from Figma that's automatically keeping the links on the right and the logo on the left. But in the middle here, we've got our text and our image not really responding. And down here, we've got some issues. But in an upcoming chapter of this course, we're going to get into responsive design, breakpoints, making sure that everything's fluid. And we're going to use this exact design as our guinea pig to go step by step through that process. So we're not going to fuss with all that now. Just know that you might have to take some steps to make your design perfectly responsive in Framer. Another thing I want to point out is that when it comes to text, if you've used a custom font in your Figma document, a font that's stored locally on your computer, you may have issues when you publish it to the web because other folks don't have that same font on their computer. So I highly recommend combing through and replacing any of those local fonts with Google fonts or fonts that are available here in Framer, so that way they show up on the web. If I scroll down to the bottom of this page, you could see that we don't have a footer. Let's say hypothetically that the Figma file didn't have a footer, which it didn't. And that's because this is a new page for an existing website, and the website already has a footer. But I still need to get it in here. So this is exactly where the Framer browser extension comes in. So if I head over to Chrome, I haven't installed the extension yet, so we can do it here together. I'm here on the Chrome Web Store. That's where you'll find the Framer browser extension. I'm just going to do a search for Framer, and you'll find HTML to Framer. That's the one. Then here I can click Add to Chrome, and then I get a little modal to confirm I would like to add the extension, and that should be a done deal. Since this is a Chrome extension, it of course works with Chrome, but if you're using Arc or Microsoft Edge, it works with both of those as well, because they're both built on Chromium. So now that I've got this plugin installed, the next thing I want to do is open the little plugins dropdown, and I'm going to pin it because, again, this is something I'm going to run over and over again each time I need to grab something from a live website. Cool. Now that I've got my little plugin icon on the toolbar, I'm going to head over to the live website that you can visit yourself if you want to test this plugin out. And I'm going to scroll all the way down and find the footer. And here that is. Now the browser extension is a little bit reversed compared to the Figma plugin. Since we can't select layers on a live website, we instead run the plugin first, then select what we want to bring over. So I'm going to run the plugin. And with the plugin running, we can mouse over different elements that are on the canvas. And this is basically the same kind of direct selection mechanics that you get on the canvas in Framer. It'll drill down the hierarchy to grab the bottommost element in the hierarchy. So you can directly grab text layers, you can grab images, graphics, SVGs, etc. You just have to make sure you're hovering on the right spot. And even when you are hovered on the right spot, this isn't including the parent frame that has that black background. So what we can do is press the escape key to go up a level in the hierarchy. Then we can click to copy that to the clipboard. And you can press the escape key multiple times to go up and up and up the hierarchy as high as you need to go. You can also hold the shift key if you want to select multiple elements at once, but I do recommend doing this in little bits. It's just that much more manageable. So I'm going to click to copy this footer. Then I'm going to slide back over to our Framer document. And again, before I hit paste, I'm going to make sure I have the breakpoint selected. So I'm pasting into the right parent frame. And boom, there we go. The one thing that happened here that might have been a little bit unexpected is that this navbar came in at 1750 pixels wide, which means the breakpoint actually expanded to 1750 pixels wide to make room for it. So why the heck did that happen? That's because my browser is that wide. So you may want to make your browser window smaller before you copy and bring things over, because it's going to bring them over at the size that they appear. So just a heads up on that. Back over to Framer, it's an easy fix and a good way to pressure test how this layout came over, because we want to make sure that it expands and contracts successfully. Again, we're going to get into much greater detail in the future chapter where we dig into responsive design, but just so that we can collapse this without things going haywire, I'm going to hold the Option key and grab all of these little nav elements, and then I'm going to press Command Return or Control Enter on a PC to wrap those in a frame. Then I'm going to do the same on the other side. Hold the Option or Alt key, grab all these elements, and Command Return or Control Enter on a PC to wrap those in a frame. And now that each of these are wrapped in their own frame, I'll grab the parent frame, add a layout to it. Of course, defaults to a horizontal stack layout because these things are side by side, but I'm going to switch the distribution from center to space between. So that way they get spread all the way out. The one on the left goes all the way to the left. The one on the right goes all the way to the right. And we can solve the rest by clamping down the height with fit content and then adding padding all around. I'll do 80 pixels here. So that way these things are dynamically pushed away from the edge and pushed out to the sides, which means if this gets smaller, they should stay pushed out to the sides, but with that 80 pixels of padding. So now I can grab the desktop breakpoint and I should be able to set this right back to 1200. And we can see the footer is still a little bit messed up. That is because its width is fixed. So I'm just going to change that from a fixed width to instead fill the width of its parent, which is the breakpoint itself. So there we have it. It's squashed down pretty nicely. Again, there's going to be more to it to make this perfectly responsive, especially getting down to those narrow breakpoints like mobile devices, but we're going to get to that in chapter 5. One last little thing. Since you can grab things from live websites, you can technically take things that you don't have the right to use. We created this tool so that you can migrate your own websites or websites on behalf of clients with their permission. So use it responsibly, please. But one little trick in Framer is if you do go to the settings tab for your sites, we have the option to opt out of the HTML to Framer Chrome extension. So with that turned on, others will be blocked from grabbing stuff from your site using the browser extension. Now you know how quick and easy it is to bring your existing design work over from Figma and from live websites. Things will always need a little tweaking, but with this lesson combined with what you've already learned in the course, you'll have what you need to tidy up your layers and your layouts. That's it for this one. I'll see you in the next one.